New General Manager Joe Hortiz had his first official press conference, and after hearing his vision, I believe that between him, Justin Herbert, and Jim Harbaugh, the Chargers have the perfect trio to lead them into their new era.
You are Locked On Chargers, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Chargers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, and welcome into the Locked On Chargers podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Wade, joined as always by my co-host, David Drogemeyer. And we've been covering the Chargers together now for 8 seasons together, but this is our 6th year as the host of the Locked On Chargers podcast, bringing you your team every day. Thank you guys, as always, for making us your first listen today. And to make sure you never miss the show, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel, and listen wherever you get your podcast from, especially so you don't miss big interviews like tomorrow when we have Daniel Popper on the show. But David, what do we got today?
Well, Daniel, we finally got to hear from the Chargers' new general manager, and it is very clear to me that the vision that he shares also is shared by Jim Harbaugh, and that vision is about getting the most out of Justin Herbert and putting a good running game in front of him to try to take some of that pressure off. And also, we get to hear about what his philosophies are and the fact that he thinks that the Chargers are ready to win now.
Yeah, he doesn't think it's a rebuild. He said, hey, we want to win every season, and this season is the next season. So we're planning on winning this year, and the moves that we make in the offseason are going to reflect that. But this episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use the code all lowercase LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. David, Joe Hortiz, to me, was infectious in his first press conference. I really loved his energy that he brought to the table. And after hearing what his vision was and how he kind of plans on collaborating with Jim Harbaugh, working with this team and building a consistent winner, it was very clear to me, okay, this guy is sharing that vision. And when you think about this regime change, first new general manager in 11 seasons, trying to get the most out of this quarterback that you know is great, and having an awesome leader like Jim Harbaugh, it to me feels like the perfect trio of guys for the Chargers to go into this new era trying to find an identity and trying to be a consistently winning team.
First and foremost, you have to get the coach right. And I feel like that everyone knows that the Chargers got the coach right. Then you want to make sure that you have the right partner in crime for that coach. And that is somebody that has a shared vision, that understands what your coach wants, the philosophies that they're going to bring to the table, and how to really bring those philosophies and take them and put them into life. I mean, that's really what this is all about. And then it's all about trying to get Justin Herbert in the best position to win football games, because we all know he is one of the great talents in the league, and he has not had enough of a supporting cast up to this point. And they all know that building a successful running game is going to be a part of that vision of trying to protect Justin Herbert and to be able to get the most out of him.
Yeah, I mean, and the other thing about him is that he built a defense for a Jesse Minter type of defense already. He's built a Greg Roman, their new offensive coordinator. If you haven't seen the bonus episode, make sure you guys check that out, our reaction to Greg Roman officially being there. He's built that offense. He's built that defense before. And now you have an elite quarterback, you have a proven winning coach, and a man who helped build one of the best rosters in the NFL over the last 20 years. That feels like the right combination, and it doesn't feel like, David, they get someone like Joe Hortiz, who was with the same organization for 26 seasons, unless they got the coach fit right. And John Spanos talked about that. And before we got the GM, then we got the coach. This time we made sure that we got the coach, and then he was a good, they had a good relationship with who the GM was going to be, so you can get those guys working on the same page together. But I don't think they get Joe Hortiz unless they have Jim Harbaugh.
Absolutely not. And when you hear about Joe Hortiz talking about Jim Harbaugh, it is very clear that he speaks about him with a level of reverence that, really befits what Jim Harbaugh has done as a coach. And he said he's a special leader. He's a special coach. He's a special person. I've got to know him. I've known him for a long time, actually. Always loved being around him. I'm inspired to be working next to him and with him. I can't wait to get started. That is how you want your general manager to talk about your head coach. And it is very clear, like I said, that the respect is there and that he's excited about this opportunity. But hey, if you were a first-time general manager, wouldn't you want to have a coach with the pedigree of a Jim Harbaugh? I mean, wouldn't that just put your mind at ease knowing that, at that point, that aspect of things is going to be taken care of with a guy that's won every single place that he's been?
And the other thing is a guy that you've already known. He said he's known Jim Harbaugh since before he knew John Harbaugh. Jim Harbaugh was the quarterback for the Ravens his first year when he started with the Ravens. And he actually got invited out to a racquetball court and basically said he was going to try to show them he could hang with some professional athletes and just got chucked around for
Wrong answer.
But yeah, I mean, he said Jim's been on the list. I've had a couple of chances to work elsewhere. Of course he has, right? And he's always been at the top of my list. He even said, hey, we've talked about this Batman and Robin thing since before this opportunity even came up. This is a plan these guys have had for a little while, he said.
I'm not wearing tights.
But he's not wearing the tights. He said he's down for everything else, but he's not wearing the tights. But yeah, I mean, it's a dream job, right? As he said, ownership check, which it's hard to argue that at this point with the money they're putting into this coaching staff and the new facilities and all of that. You have the quarterback, you have the head coach. Those are the kind of dream opportunities, the dream job that lures someone like Joe Hortiz from leaving one of the winningest franchises in football over the past 2 decades. And that's why having Jim Harbaugh and him have that relationship is so important. And you can just tell that they have the same vision for how to turn this team into a consistently winning team. And it starts by building around Justin Herbert. And what it means is, like you talked about a little bit, you want to build that running game. You want to do other things. It's not just about getting Justin Herbert new weapons, right? It's about building a great offense around Justin Herbert and giving him everything he needs to succeed, not just necessarily the flashy things that look good.
And echoing the comments of Jim Harbaugh as well. He said, I think Jim Harbaugh mentioned it last week. We want to be strong, physical, tough. We want to develop a really good running game. You build a great running game and a great offensive line. You protect your quarterback. I've seen it done year in and year out where I came from. You have to help him by supporting with players that help the entire offense. And that's just music to my ears, because I am always, and I have always, and I will always be a huge proponent of building the spine of your football team, strengthening the spine of your team. That means getting the best offensive line out there, the best defensive line out there, but specifically on offense, your offensive line is the key to everything. You protect your quarterback, you open up holes for your running back, you set that physicality tone. Everything starts up front and the offensive line. So this vision of really understanding that you have to get the most out of this offensive line and build a running game that takes some pressure off your quarterback so he doesn't have to be Superman, so he doesn't have to do it all. I mean, I think it's really going to be a good look for the Chargers to have a really good running game to be able to take some pressure off of Justin Herbert. It's going to make him look even better.
You hope so, and that's, goes along with the additions of the Mike Devlins and the Greg Romans and the guys that they've hired, right? Guys he's built offenses for. It all goes into the same kind of thing, is kind of looking at the offense differently, building around Justin Herbert differently. And when you look at it, okay, why should you trust it? Well, maybe because this guy built a team around Lamar Jackson, who's one of the most, if not the most unique quarterback in the NFL, and helped him have 2 MVP seasons. Because what do we always talk about with being MVP, right? It has a lot to do with your stats. It has a lot more to do with how good your team is. You can put up ridiculous numbers. If you're a 500 team, you're not going to win MVP. And with Baltimore, he built a team around a quarterback whose obviously specialty is with his legs, but obviously showed this year that he can do a lot more than that, right?
Yeah.
He built the offenses around him that led that man to 2 MVPs. So that's why you feel good about putting him around Justin Herbert, letting him build around Justin Herbert. And the way you hear him talk about Justin Herbert lets you know that he knows exactly how special he is. So even though, you cannot like the Greg Roman hire, right? You could disagree with potentially what some of these draft picks end up being or the new philosophy as this team goes in a different direction. But you have to trust, okay, well, this guy's been able to do it. He's done it before. He knows what it takes to help build a MVP winning team around your potential MVP winning quarterback. And I think the proof is in the pudding there. So I'm excited to see what this guy can do around Justin Herbert, because he knows he has the coach, he has the quarterback to compete and win consistently in this league. And just the way you hear him talk about it, like he fully believes it. And it doesn't seem like he could be any more excited about the opportunity that lies in front of him. But yeah, make Justin Herbert's life easier, make a complete option, or complete offense, and commit to the trenches to protect him. All of those things, check, check, check. But how do you do that? How do you rebuild this team? How do you get more depth and make this a consistent winning team? It starts with what he loves, comp picks, compensatory picks he brought up so many times. And he also talked about exactly what kind of players they're going to be looking for. So we're going to talk about that coming up right after this. First, though, I need to tell you guys about DoorDash, because the biggest game of the season is coming up, and you have to make sure you have DoorDash ready to go, because it can get really spoiled quickly if you don't have what you need to be prepared for the biggest game of the year. I mean, there's only one more football game left. Are you going to mess that up? No. If you have the chips, you need to have the dip. If you have the burgers, you need to have the buns. And you can make sure you have all of that at your fingertips with DoorDash. I mean, for me, I'm going to a party, but I'm just going to have DoorDash delivered there. It's going to get there hot. It's going to be ready to go. I'm not going to have to prep any of it beforehand, and that's one of the things I love. But whether you're looking for a local restaurant to cater your party or you just want something from the nearest grocery store and you just need some ingredients, you can do all of that with DoorDash. So you can kick back at kickoff with the unbeatable deals that you're going to find there and get prepared for before game day like you need to, and stock up on your favorite appetizers and order everything that you need. And also you can save some money because you can get 50% off up to a $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order when you download the DoorDash app. Enter code LOCKED23, subject to change, terms apply. But don't forget, that's code LOCKED23 for 50% off up to a $10 value when you download the DoorDash app and spend $15 or more, subject to change, terms apply. I also need to tell you guys about Prize Picks because, like I talked about, there's only one game left. And this is a great opportunity for you to check out the best daily fantasy in the business. Because with Prize Picks, all you have to do is select 2 or more players, pick more or less than their projected stats, and place your entry. And the more entries you hit on, the more you win. If you hit up to 6 of them, you can win 25 times on your first entry. Prize Picks also has great promotions going on all the time. They're also the only daily fantasy that has the reboot policy for injured players, so you have to check that out. And right now, for this big game, you can get Patrick Mahomes at a crazy discount. All you have to do is know that he's going to go more than or less than half a passing yard. That's it. And you can combine that with only one more thing to win. You can combine it with Christian McCaffrey rushing for more than or less than 87.5 rushing yards, or George Kittle going for more than or less than 49.5 receiving yards, or combine all 3 of them and get nuts, right? You can do that too. All you have to do is go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use the code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. That's prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL, promo code LockedOnNFL for that deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy. David, let's continue our thoughts on General Manager Joe Hortiz's first time at the podium in his first press conference. A lot of things to like there, but when you talk about what he's going to bring to the table philosophically, that was a lot of what excited me from what he had to say, because I do think there's a lot of things that he does a lot differently than Tom Telesco, right? You want to be different than what's led you to the last kind of 11 years of underachieving, and it does feel like Joe Hortiz is going to bring some of that to the table. And the one thing he could not shut up about, and brought it up a few separate times, was the compensatory picks, getting extra draft picks because of the free agents that you have leave, going and signing bigger deals elsewhere. Compensatory picks are huge, Dave, and Joe Hortiz is a big fan.
I mean, hey, getting more cracks at it, right? Getting more opportunities at the draft to try to fill out the roster, as many as you possibly can. And he spoke about it with a lot of enthusiasm. It was clear this is something that is a big part of his philosophy. So I'm a big fan of comp picks. Number one, let's create that chain. Let's create that cycle of comp picks. How do you do that? You gain as many picks as you can early, and then you draft, develop, and then make smart decisions on who you re-sign. That's exactly how the formula is. And one of the things that the Chargers did is, with Tom Telesco, the philosophy was, hey, we're going to draft him, we're going to re-sign him, we're going to keep him in the building. That's not necessarily the case with Joe Hortiz. You want to keep your core players and you want to re-sign them, but you also are not afraid to let some of those guys go so you can pick up some more comp picks, some more opportunities to improve your roster and keep that talent flowing year after year.
Yeah, and the Ravens, according to Daniel Popper, had 3 times as many compensatory picks, more
Crazy.
than the Chargers had during the Tom Telesco era over that same span. I mean, the Ravens had more compensatory picks that were just in the 3rd and 4th round than the Chargers had during the Tom Telesco era.
Wild.
And it just feels like a loophole in the system that the Chargers weren't exploiting, right?
They
like
weren't.
That's really what it comes down to, and you want to have as many picks as possible. The only time that the Chargers had a compensatory pick in recent history was actually good, right, was when Phillip Rivers left to go to the Colts, and who'd they use that pick on? Trey McKitty. So it hasn't been used a lot. But the other big thing from him that you could tell was important is just valuing every draft pick, right? There's no throwaway draft pick. You're trying to hit on every single round, and he has seen it in his time. He says, hey, I've seen a player become a Pro Bowler from a 5th round pick. That matters. And that's something that the Ravens have been able to do over the last, 10, 20 years, is be able to get value later on in the draft, which will be something that is so nice to hear.
Please.
David. Yeah. I mean, it's something this team needs because that's how you build depth, right?
Yeah.
But it also was clear hearing Joe Hortiz talk just about what kind of players he's looking for, because it's not just about, how many picks that you get, right? It's about being efficient with those picks, and it's about bringing in the right type of players, and it seems like he has an idea of exactly what he's looking for.
He does, yeah. It's very, very clear what he's looking for with the type of players that he wants to bring in. He said, we want them all to be big, fast, and tough and smart. Tough is the key. You have to have that mentality. But then part of the player only is 50% of the player is the talent and the skill set to play the position. The other 50% is the person. We're going to do a deep dive into that. We want players that are committed to team. And he said that a lot too. That was another big key term, theme was team. We want guys with that team mindset. We want everybody to be out here to create a family kind of environment. And that's with guys that have that shared mindset. So it's very clear. They want good football players, but they also want good people as well. And that's, I think, a philosophy that the Chargers have had for a very, very long time. I mean, they really do take a deep dive into the person, not just the player. It is a big part of their evaluation process.
And the great thing about Joe Hortiz is he came through in a position that he had basically had it somewhere at every stop that he's done, right? He made his way all the way up from basically a water boy to one of the biggest positions in the Ravens franchise, right? Like he was a personal assistant and he ended up being
Getting
the director of player personnel. So he's done it all. He knows how to relate to these scouts. He knows how to translate to them in his words exactly what he's looking for. And the other big thing is it's not just about finding players that have, check off certain boxes. It's about getting players that fit the culture. So, that guys, as he said, are going to play the same whether they're up 30 or down 30. And he said, this is what they're looking for. He's like, hey, let's go. Let's attack. I call it the Chargers mentality, right? Changing the culture, sidebar, right?
Yeah.
We want people to walk into SoFi Stadium, teams to walk in and know what they're in for. That's what teams do when they're playing the Baltimore Ravens, and that's what they're going to try to create here. And you love that, right? You want teams to not want to play you, and it doesn't feel like the Chargers were that. It feels like they were more a finesse team, and you change that by who you bring into the building. And yes, they're going to do everything analytically and get all of the data to bring in the best athletes and get big and strong. But they also have to find guys who are going to play a hard 60 minutes and not crumble in these big moments at the end of games, which I think is absolutely gigantic.
They want this thing to be a slobber knocker. They want people to come in and know that they played the Chargers and that it was a physical contest, that it was a knockdown, drag-out fight.
And with the comp picks, it also shows you they're willing to turn over any stone, right? And it's not just about getting the compensatory picks, but it's also using trades to improve the team as well, David, which is something that, Khalil Mack's a great example of when it worked, but we just didn't see it nearly enough in the last regime.
I mean, it's unbelievable to hear this. It's so strange. It's so weird. It's
alien.
Like
it's
trades
foreign.
never even existed, especially during the season, but not anymore. With Joe Hortiz, it's definitely part of his avenues of trying to improve the team. If we can find a player leading up to the trade deadline that can help the Chargers now and going forward, either way, and there's different ways you can trade for players you end up factoring into compensatory formula. Maybe it's just a loan, or you can trade for a player that you want to retain. So this is part of his philosophy. He is going to literally do anything and everything that he possibly can to try to improve this team, not just before the season, but during the season as well.
Yeah, and it is funny because it does feel like it's foreign and we didn't see it nearly enough. And it's not just trading for players, but it's also trading draft picks and specifically trading back and creating more draft picks, which was a totally foreign thing under Tom Telesco because he never did it a single time, right?
Ever.
And so the way he's looking at trades is, hey, I can trade back to get more picks to help improve this roster as much as I possibly can. I could also, trade to get a guy that can turn into a compensatory pick. So I'm kind of getting some money back on that deal, right?
Yeah.
Because
ROI
these players
right
are going to, exactly. So that kind of minimizes what you're giving up for it, and it can help you in that season. And it's just so nice to see it kind of looked at in a different way, because with Tom Telesco, he might have always said, oh, hey, we're going to explore every avenue. But he never did it, right? And that's the thing,
you don't believe it.
It rings a little bit differently when you see someone like Joe Hortiz, who's from, the Ozzie Newsome, from the Eric DaCosta, front office tree where it's like that's what they do. That's where they try to find these hidden advantages that we always talk about on the field. You can find those hidden advantages off the field as well. And when you didn't trade as much in the Telesco era, it's nice to hear it's going to be a different approach under Joe Hortiz, and something that I think is going to help them even more than we've seen, right? And help hopefully take this team to the next level, which is really what this is all about, and finding that consistent winner. But the good news is he doesn't think it's going to take long. Joe Hortiz does know that there's going to be some tough decisions that have to be made during this offseason, but he also still thinks there's plenty of talent on this roster where they're going to compete and they're going to try to win it all as soon as 2024. So we're going to get into his thoughts on that coming up right after this. First, though, I do need to tell you guys that today's episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. Sometimes we all need the opportunity to get something off our chest, big or small. Certain things can really start to get to you, and it's important to let that out, especially to someone who's unbiased on your life. So today, I want to say how I really feel about something. You might even be thinking about the same thing this week, and I need to talk about the fact that even with everything going as well as it possibly could happen this offseason, there's still that doubt in the back of my mind that things could go terribly wrong. And I know as Chargers fans, you guys all feel that, but going to therapy has helped that take up much less real estate in my brain, just being able to compartmentalize and see things a little bit more clearly. But I also blame Brandon Staley, I blame Marlon McCree, I blame Mike McCoy and Norv Turner and Anthony Lynn and Tom Telesco and everyone else along the way for not letting me be hopeful. But this offseason has also helped a little bit with that. It's easy to feel hope again, and therapy can be different for everyone. Most of us have bigger problems than our favorite sports team, and it's important to get things off your chest every once in a while. So if you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be flexible and suited to your schedule. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. David, I want to continue getting into what Joe Hortiz had to say in his first press conference as the new Chargers general manager, because there were some more nuggets we were able to mine from that. But I do want to tell everyone to make sure they're checking out the first ever national 24/7 sports streaming show that the Locked On Podcast Network has right now going on YouTube. There's nothing quite like it in the way that they cover all sports with the local experts that only Locked On knows how to provide is one of the best things going right now. So make sure you guys are subscribing to Locked On Sports Today, the first ever national 24/7 sports streaming channel. David, one thing I wanted to talk about today was we heard a lot of things repeated consistently through this interview, right? And what we did hear the most was winning and creating a consistent winner. And Daniel Popper, I believe it was Popper, asked him basically if there was any incentive to rip the Band-Aid off during this offseason, do a rebuild, kind of build this thing all in your vision, right? And tear it all the way down so you can build it back up into something new. But Joe Hortiz made it very clear, David, that the goal is to win this year.
Yeah, definitively clear. And he wanted to emphasize it too. Said our goal is to build a winner every year. We want to compete to win a championship every year, okay? That's going to be starting now. That's not going to be let's gut it and start over. What balance of players give us the best opportunity to go out there and compete this year? I know what we're trying to be, all right. What we know we're trying to be, all right, and we're gunning. We're going in that direction. We're not mailing in a season. That's not going to happen.
That
is the philosophy right there. He does not believe in throwing it away and trying to gut it and restart it. No, this is more of a retool and get ready to go try to win a championship right away.
And the thing is there's going to have to be tough decisions that get made, no matter what he's saying right here, right?
Yeah.
Like you're going to have to lose some of those pricey, contracts that you have right now between Bosa and Mike Williams and Keenan Allen and Khalil Mack. Like some of those guys are going to have to go. But he's saying, hey, it's a hard part of the job. The good news is I've had a lot of experience with that. I've been with the Ravens and been over the cap and had to help making these tough decisions, right? But the other thing is I'm not going to totally gut the roster because we're trying to win right now and we think we can win right now. And even though they're ready to make the tough decisions, David, they still feel like they have the talent on this roster where they can build around it this offseason and still be a winner in 2024.
Yeah, and that's the big thing you want to hear, right? You want to make sure that the new guy coming in recognizes that there is still some guys on the roster that can ball. He said there's some talent on this field. You know that they draft players here. They drafted some really talented players. We've played them. We've lost to them in the playoffs. We've beaten them in tough, hard-fought games. Our goal is just to build it bigger, better, and strong. We want people to walk in here, teams to walk into this stadium knowing they've played us. And that right there. That last sentence right there, that gets
That's what gets you
fired up.
going. Yeah.
That's what gets the blood pumping. That's what gets you excited. That's what gets the hair sticking up. That's what you want. You want them to know that they're coming to play the Chargers, and this is not going to be just a walk in the park. This isn't going to be a walk on the beach. This is not going to be fun. This is going to be physical. It's going to hurt, and you're going to know that you played the Chargers for several days after you left SoFi Stadium.
You love that, and you love that because the Chargers have been lacking an identity for so long. And I think it's such a good point that he brings up right there. And I think the other point of it too, and one thing he's telling you with this is the guys that you have on this roster weren't properly utilized, right? He's saying, I think that with the coaching staff we're bringing in, I think under this new regime, we can get more out of the players than this current, the previous regime was able to get. I see that they have talent here. I don't think that the problem and the reason the Chargers haven't been winning was all because of the talent, right? And he feels like he can supplement what they have here so that Khalil Mack wants to stick around because it's not a rebuilding season. So you can get that buy-in because that is such a big thing. If you want to create that winning culture when they're going out and trying to find the right players that fit, as they put it, the new Charger mentality, right? It's not chargering. They want Charger mentality to be a good thing instead of a pejorative statement, right? You want it. You don't want it to be always used at the butt of the joke.
Right,
and they
the
feel
laughing
like
stock.
If you can get players with that right winning mentality, if you can get players to play the way this team, envisions that it can, you're going to be able to do that. And that's one of the things that it's going to take to build a consistent winner. And then another thing, David, when you're talking about winning and trying to stay competitive every season is what you're doing in season. Because we talked about Batman and Robin. Once that season starts, Jim Harbaugh becomes Batman, Joe Hortiz becomes Robin, but he also is saying, hey, we're going to have an everyday collaboration. I'm going to talk to him every morning. And when we're in this season, we're going to talk about what do you need to get the most out of this roster? What kind of players do you want?
And that's really, really nice to hear because with Tom Telesco as the general manager, it seemed like he did some things to work to get that roster ready up until when the season started. And then when the season was underway, that kind of stopped. They didn't really make any in-season trades. They really just signed a couple of guys off the street to patch holes here and there, but no meaningful moves were made to upgrade the roster. And I think what that is telling me now is that Joe Hortiz is going to do anything and everything he has to do to get what Jim Harbaugh needs. He said, hey, if you need an inside backer, I'm going to go get that inside backer because that's what you said that you need. And I think that's really the dynamic that really excites me when I talk about that.
And another thing you talked about was just churning the bottom of that roster, right? And just, hey, like there were so many seasons under Tom Telesco where we went into week one, we went into the preseason, we went into training camp knowing that there was these glaring holes that were out there. And it just didn't feel like there was enough of an effort, that there was too much blind faith in the guys that they had drafted and trusting their pre-draft biases to actually fill the team the way it needed to go. Way too much just hoping somebody would make the leap that we hadn't previously seen from them. Too much just hoping, right? With them, he's saying, I'm going to churn out the roster. I'm going to explore every avenue. I'm going to be getting the best undrafted free agents. We're going to have talent at the end of our roster, and those are the guys that are going to be able to fill in when there are pricey guys that we can't afford, and those guys are going to turn into comp picks. So you can see how the cycle starts, where all you need to do is kind of get things on track, and then the cycle will take care of the rest of it as long as you're drafting the right kind of players, as long as you're developing the players that you're drafting, and it all starts going back to you. The rich get richer, and that's how you can go to the playoffs every year and have a consistent winner and be in line to compete for your division title every single year, even when you're in a division with Patrick Mahomes. But if you're not getting those things done, then you don't have a chance in the Patrick Mahomes division. This is giving them their best shot here. And that's why, when they say things like, hey, we're going to go get multiple championships, you see the vision and you understand why they feel that way.
Yeah, and it was echoed by everybody, and as well as the new general manager, Joe Hortiz, where he says, we are going to build a consistent winner here. We are going to bring you a trophy, Dean. We are going to get it done. That's what you want to hear. You want to hear that message be echoed across the leadership group, and that is what we have heard. And yeah, it's nice, when the coach says, oh, I want to get multiple championships. It might be lip service, but from a guy that just came off of a national championship and who has won every place that he's been, and also with a general manager that has a couple of Super Bowl rings already, that is what you want. That's the ultimate goal, is to bring a trophy, to bring a championship, a world championship to the Chargers.
You want to be a champion, bring in champions. Joe Hortiz, Jim Harbaugh, champions, championship pedigree. So when they say that, I don't think you hear a lot of people saying that. Like, I don't think you have a lot of guys taking that job and not being afraid of setting the expectations too high for themselves. These are two winners. These are two dudes who only know how to win, so they don't see it going any other way than the Chargers figuring this thing out, that they're going to be a successful team, not in a couple of years, not a 10-year process. They're trying to be good right now, and they think they can do it because that's what they've done every place that they've been, and they've helped build winners. Now they're doing it in Los Angeles, and I think there's a lot to be excited about there. But that's going to wrap things up for today's show. Make sure you guys are back here because we have one of our favorite guests, the most recurring guest ever on this show, Daniel Popper, who's putting out some of the best, if not the best, Chargers content out there, the best in written word. Hands down, he is coming on the show tomorrow to talk about all of the latest news that we have because we know who the offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator are. We know what General Manager Joe Hortiz vision is. Can't wait to talk with him about all of that. And Jim Harbaugh, of course, is in the building now. So make sure you guys are here for that by subscribing and following for free wherever you get your podcast from and on YouTube and listening to the show all the time, everywhere. Whether it's, you want to listen on the podcast or YouTube, you can always get us in however you want us every single day, Locked On Network. But make sure you're following us on social media as well. You can find us on Twitter at Locked On LAC, Instagram at Locked On Chargers, and our Locked On Chargers Facebook page. You can also find me on Twitter at Dan Talk Sports and David Drogemeyer on Twitter at Dro Talk SD. So make sure you guys are back here tomorrow talking all of the offseason craziness with the Athletics' Daniel Popper. But until then, guys, take it easy and go Bolts.